Hey guys, you are now watching In the Seat. I'm your host, Valerie Perez. I'm sure we're all aware of Michael Cohen's recent hearings. As Trump's former lawyer, he was able to testify in court. Here's a short video with some of the highlights on the first open door hearing and a couple of topics that we're going to discuss today. Michael Cohen used to be President Trump's former lawyer. He started working for him in 2007. This year, on February 27th, Cohen testified again in court. There were allegations that he lied to Congress on behalf of Trump. This led Americans to request for the ultimate truth and to see whether Trump committed any crimes during his 2016 election or while he was serving as president in the Oval Office. Cohen showed up to court this time with financial documents that had Trump's signature on them and other evidence. He still denied that Trump had any connection with Russia for collusion or that Cohen himself took any part in it. While many suggested that Cohen would lie again this time, he stated what his participation in Trump's previous actions were. He apologized for disappointing his family, and he even named other people who were also involved in these allegations and crimes. I sat down with two students to discuss this long and cohesive court hearing. Welcome back. Today we have Victor and Alex joining us. Alex is an economics major, and he can give us some insight on some of the real concerns involving the president's past and current finances. Welcome to the show, guys. Can you please introduce yourselves and tell us which political party you identify with?
Hi, my name is Victor Munguia, and I affiliate with the Republican Party. We stand for limited federal government, defending our Second Amendment rights, and strong border security.
All right.
My name is Alex Holcomb. I'm a senior economics student here at UTD. If I had to say I identified with one particular one, I maybe used to identify with the Republican Party, but since the 2016 election, I've kind of fallen out of it. I'd probably say I identify as a Democrat right now.
Yeah, so many people's minds have changed after the 2016 election, so I'm not surprised.
Yeah, absolutely.
So now that we've, been able to reflect on the hearing, there have been some political commentators criticizing the behavior of some of the court members, especially at the beginning. Some have even gone far enough to say that it's inappropriate. For example, like Mr. Jordan's anger. How do you respond to this whenever you watched it?
Well, I think it's expected. I think this is politics. There's always going to be anger. There's going to be uprising. It's hard to tell if they're right. It's all about the political agenda, and it's about basically Jordan, who I know he can be rather riled up. So I think it's normal, and I think it should be okay. It's not that big of a deal.
Right, that's true. And they do have police officers there present and stuff.
Happened, yeah, it would be fine.
What about you?
I mean, I would say it's expected. You're exactly right. It's part of a political agenda, but I still think it's demoralizing whenever you think about the types of questions and the types of allegations that were brought up by either side. I mean, you can tell there were quite a few Democratic representatives up there that were trying to get Mr. Cohen to, agree to some salacious comments. They were definitely trying to go after Mr. Trump for a lot more than Cohen was brought in there for.
Right.
But I think that what's also telling is the Republicans how their line of questioning was very much in defense of Mr. Trump. It was definitely discouraging for sure.
Right, and then I noticed at the beginning it was also anger, but then it kind of turned into frustration at a certain point whenever he was kind of interacting with Judge Elijah Cummings. It was to a point where he was just we need to take a vote, and then they took the vote, and he ended up doing whatever had to be possible. But it was at that point where I was just okay, so this is anger, and then this is also frustration from the Republican Party.
Yeah, absolutely.
Would you agree with?
I would agree. I think this is another just Democratic ploy, honestly, and anger is expected. This is just another factor of this witch hunt that I truly believe it is a witch hunt.
Yeah.
And a lot of evidence has come out showing there is no Russia collusion, and I think it's fair reaction.
Yeah. What did you think about Cohen's demeanor during the first hearing? Do you think he sounded sincere whenever he was talking about, his relationship with Trump, his family, and all of that?
Not one bit. I don't think he was sincere at all, given the fact that just 2 years ago, he had a book manuscript that praised President Trump in a very good way. parading him in a very positive light, saying that everything the media was saying about Trump was wrong, and that the only thing was true, that he just trusts the media. So I honestly think that alone is enough to discredit that he is not sincere.
That, while, yes, like his current situation definitely aligns with his incentive to, I guess, not agree with Mr. Trump. I mean, I think that, he definitely defended him at a lot of points in the hearing that I think really lended to his credibility. Whenever, again, some Democratic representatives were going after him, trying to get him to, I guess, talk about things like an elevator tape that may have existed between him and, striking his wife. Cohen definitely went to the president's, defense, saying that he didn't believe that any tapes like that existed, and that, he didn't think that President Trump had ever struck his wife. He defended him at a lot of key points in that hearing and didn't agree to a lot of the more salacious accusations. I think that really lended to his credibility, that he was not just agreeing to everything that would be detrimental to President Trump, but the things that he was privy to, and telling the truth throughout the hearing.
Yeah, well, one thing that I found interesting is that people and like regular civilians and political commentators were more just like, why are we having this hearing when he's lied to, the courts before? And that was one of the things, all the sincerity, that they were like, their defense was, if he's lied before, then what's the point of having this one now? Do you think that kind of goes with it, or it's just kind of like he's a lawyer and lawyers lie for a living, so at least that's what people say.
I mean, if the narrative is that Cohen is making this testimony because he was once a Trump insider, where, we've gotten dozens of, indictments, for all sorts of campaign violations, financial violations throughout the, I guess last few years. If the idea is that he flipped on President Trump and that he no longer has an incentive to lie on his behalf, then I don't think that it discredits him at all. It just fits in with the narrative. That he no longer has an incentive to protect him because he's not on his payroll anymore.
Well, I think too that what goes along with the hush money payments, and that in itself is not a campaign finance violation. So therefore, he was persuaded to testify for something that wasn't even a criminal offense. So given with that, and the fact that he has a credibility issue, we know this. And the fact that he is still telling the truth, the fact that there's no Russian collusion, he never directed him to lie to Congress. He's in trouble again for perjury on accounts of White House chief of staff position. He was known to lobby for that, so he didn't. I think that he needs to drop this. I think he still does have an incentive to lie, to come out with this, because it's retribution for not getting the chief of staff position. He wants to reduce his prison sentence. I don't think Mueller would have rejected his plea for leniency if he had anything of actual substance.
What about the part when Cohen got emotional, when we talk about sincerity and just a lawyer in general? That part kind of struck me a little bit, just because I'm familiar with his personality. And once he started talking about his family and all of that, and they started to ask him personal questions, he did get emotional. Did that part kind of, struck you at all?
No, because just today it came out that Adam Schiff had traveled to New York 4 times to coach him for over 10 hours. So I believe that this was rehearsed, and it's a pure it's a tactic that a lot of people use.
Okay.
I mean, I think it was expected, maybe not to the degree that it had happened. I mean, in any sort of testimony, you can expect like a certain element of like emotion behind it, and it definitely wouldn't have been as credible if he hadn't done that, right? But none of what was said there, I think, was false. I mean, like the way that he was feeling during that testimony. I mean, just from any portion of testimony that you can have, whenever people go up and they start, I guess, kind of having to admit to several Republican congressmen over and over and over about his wrongs from the past and their attempts to discredit him. I think that it would be reasonable for anybody to get emotional, and definitely expected. I don't think that it was. I don't think it was rehearsed in the sense that it wasn't a genuine response.
Yeah. What about his punishment? Like, do you think the punishment that he is going to serve, do you think it's sufficient for the crimes that he's committed?
I don't. I think 3 years for on counts of perjury, possibly 2 now, defrauding on his taxes, not listing his foreign contracts. I think that should be more than 3 years. I say that it warrants at least 10, because Manafort is getting sentenced for things too, and it's a lot worse. He's in there, going to be in there for about probably 50 years. Looking at the counts that I've seen, and I also think too that this does not. It's kind of weird to me that he's not going to prison until May. Why? He was already convicted. It's not like he's waiting for trial, which gives him time to do this little stunt that they're doing. In my opinion. So I think no, he should be away already and longer.
Oh, okay. What about you? Do you think it's sufficient?
I'd probably say no. I think that, whenever it comes down to a lot of campaign laws, I think that, harsher punishments to deter from this sort of thing happening is, exactly why this sort of thing is happening. Like, I mean...
So, has your opinion on Trump and Cohen changed after watching the hearing?
My opinion on President Trump has not changed at all, and neither for Michael Cohen, because I've been a fan of President Trump since he started running, and everything that's Cohen has been indicted for has nothing to do with Trump and Russia, so that's not going to change my opinion on him at all. I always thought Cohen was a liar, or not thought, I know, because he's been convicted on perjury, and so that has not changed. He has some truth to his story, because obviously he's admitting no collusion, and which we all know. So I think my opinion has stayed the same on both of them.
Yeah, and like people asked Trump what he thought afterwards while he was in the summit, and he didn't even look, well, in my opinion, whenever I saw that, Trump didn't look nervous at all. It was, if anything, I would say nervousness was coming from Cohen. That's where I could see like the different personalities. Trump is very confident. He seemed just as confident as he always does. So.
And let's not forget how many people have coached and prepped him for this testimony too.
That's true.
Yeah, I mean, I think that, whenever you're talking about like being coached, I think that both sides have been equally coached. You have to be prepared for this sort of thing, no matter who it is. But I would say my opinion hasn't changed either, but not for a lot of the reasons that you just stated. I mean, whenever you're talking about like campaign finance laws, he absolutely did break finance laws. Whenever you're talking about the hush money payments that were made, the idea is that there's a law that prohibits, first of all, like corporations from making donations, but also individuals from making donations for over $2,700. So the idea is that whenever he made these hush money payments, that they were in coordination with the campaign, because he knew that they would be detrimental to the campaign if they were to come out, because they are true. I mean, nobody's, coming out and saying anything about the actual, like, saying that Stormy Daniels is lying. I think that the idea is whenever he made, $130,000 payments and $150,000 payments, that those were over the limit for something that benefited the campaign in a coordinated fashion. And we know that President Trump knew about them because of the checks that he wrote directly to Michael Cohen. And then also they broke campaign regulations whenever it was the parent company for the National Enquirer that made a payment to a porn star on Cohen's,
the other porn star.
Yeah, on Cohen's behalf. And we know this because they've even come out and said, yes, like we wouldn't have made this payment without Mr. Cohen's direction. And Mr. Cohen has been very opaque about the idea that nothing in the Trump organization happens without Mr. Trump knowing. And I think that you can tell that just based off of his personality, the type of control that he needs. So I think that the violations are definitely there, and the Trump organization has like not come out in defense of a lot of the key points that Mr. Cohen brought up. I would definitely say that my opinion hasn't changed. I think that it's really easy for anybody to see what they want to see out of this. But I think that whenever you're talking about Mr. Trump not being nervous, I think it's because nothing that came out in this testimony was new. Right. It was just confirmed from a source that was insanely close to the president at the time of it happening. Yeah. That's the only thing that was really, I guess, serious about these allegations, is because nobody of substance has actually been able to directly say that the president was involved with a lot of these allegations, except for apparently his personal lawyer now. So,
and even Stormy Daniels, and then the other porn star that came out, I can't think of her name right now, but
I think it's Karen McDougal.
Yeah,
Karen McDougal,
they've come out. Stormy for sure. She got her own little skit on SNL off of it. So I mean, that just shows it in itself. But I think, did anything change as far as, do you think, your opinion on Cohen and Trump's relationship? So not just solely them.
I think it's pretty much severed by now.
Yeah.
I mean, they probably don't
There's
talk.
no way around that. And to kind of go back to what his point about saying about the violation, which also would affect the relationship, was that paying the hush money payments is not a campaign finance violation, because he was not campaigning at the time he paid the hush money payment. Mm-hmm. The only way it would be a violation is if he didn't list it as a campaign expense. But since he wasn't running at the time, it cannot be a campaign expense.
Yeah.
So, which I think this would definitely cut that relationship off cold.
Because the story is they did pay before the election, and then after the election as well. So they did happen during the time of campaigning. I mean, that's the reason why they had to stop the National Enquirer story, was because it was coming out weeks ahead of the election, during the time that the Access Hollywood tape had come out, and President Trump's relationship with women had, I guess, kind of come into question with the whole, grab 'em statement. And I think that anybody could see how the payment to buy the rights to the story benefited Trump and his election campaign. I mean, running against a woman, during that campaign, it would have put a serious dichotomy on the idea of Trump's ability to represent women in the country.
Well, catch and kill is not illegal.
Well, so the idea, what Trump is saying, is that it was a private interaction, right, or a private transaction. The idea that this wasn't something that was coordinated with the campaign, because so campaign finance laws regarding political action committees and actual campaigns are a little bit different, because the idea is that you can donate as much money as you want to a political action committee, as long as they don't themselves coordinate with the campaign. But the individuals that received hush money and the parent company of the National Enquirer that did pay out the money, they've all been very open with the fact that that this wouldn't have happened without Michael Cohen, and the idea that Trump was directing Michael Cohen to make these payments on his behalf. With that knowledge and intent to I guess do this in a way that would benefit the Trump campaign, it would make it an in-kind donation. And it's definitely over the campaign finance limits, obviously, with the amount of money that was listed. The argument that they're making is that it wasn't a campaign expense, but it was a personal expense, right? But I think that anybody can see that it was very naturally in the best interest of the campaign for these stories not to come out at the time that they were.
Yeah.
Well, they would have to also argue, too, that if this is grounds for impeachment, which they're pushing for, they would also have to answer why Obama did not face the same standards, because he had to pay civil penalties to the election committee.
Yeah. I think people just get so, because of kind of the statements that Cohen said and just people's personal opinions on Trump. He called him a racist, he called him a cheat, and he called him a con man. People just tend to get very over the edge when it comes to Trump. And with Barack, it's kind of a little bit different, I think, just from what I've seen on people's reactions.
Well, as Lynn Patton said, it doesn't take 15 years to figure out someone is a racist, unless, of course, they are.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Well, it looks like that's all the time we have today. Thank you so much for being here today, guys. This truly was a very good conversation. That's all the time we have. Remember to follow us on our social media pages, and feel free to subscribe to our YouTube channel for more awesome videos. And until next time, I'm your host, Valerie Perez.